Hi, I'm Alicia and welcome to my channel Papercraft Secrets. Today I'm sharing a special album that I made with the Mintay Papers Precious Moment collection. There is a little bit of a story behind the album. This is my husband's family. For his parents' 70th birthdays, we had a photo shoot, a family photo shoot, and the following year, I wanted to put those into an album to give to them for their 50th wedding anniversary. So I'm going to take you step by step through how I created the album. The Mintay Precious Moment papers are stunning for special occasion photographs. So let's take a look at how I created the album step by step. I started with a binder that I bought that you can buy from the supermarket or Big W, Kmart, and I took out the silver little lever archer so that I just have the cardboard binder that I can use to start my album with. I then used this soft fleece fabric to give the album a little bit of softness. And I purchased this material at Spotlight. So I just popped the lever arch binder on top of the white fabric, and I'm just cutting around the edges so that I've got a nice piece of fabric that's going to measure my binder quite well. And this will just give it a little bit of a soft feel. I'm just using some glue to put all over the binder, which will hold the white fabric down snugly onto the binder. I'm putting some glue on the base. And then I'm putting some glue on the front cover. Once I've got that stuck down securely, I'm just going to trim the edges, as I was finding it a little bit tricky to get an accurate cut around the edges, so when it wasn't glued down. So this is a DIY way of making an album for very little money. I think this binder cost, I don't know, you can pick them up for $2 or $3, sometimes $4 or $5. I have heard of people using spray adhesives, which I would like to try on my next album, because I find that it's hard to get a really even coverage with this glue. So next time that I make an album, I'm going to try a spray adhesive just so I don't get any wrinkles in my fabric. Every time I make one of these albums, I learn a little bit more, and I am learning that even though this glue is very soft and it doesn't dry hard, it doesn't give as good a coverage as I think a spray adhesive would do. So that will be my change for the next time I create this album. So I'm just smoothing that down so that all the glue is adhering and there's no bumps and lumps. Then I just repeat that process by adding glue to the spine of the album and smoothing it down, and then adding glue to the back of the album and smoothing it down. Now I'm going to cover the album just as I would cover a book with contact. You just have to be a little bit careful there with the folds. Sometimes you can make a little snip in the fabric, which just gives you a better neater finish, I guess is what I'm looking for, a neater finish there with the folds. And then for the corners, you want to do it as neatly as you can so that you've got a nice clean finish with your corners. And just folding those down into a triangle and then gluing everything down. We will cover up this inside so you won't see the actual inside. Here's the beautiful Mintay papers. I absolutely adore this collection. I love the colours. I actually asked the family members to dress in a colour scheme for the photos so that they would match these papers. So I asked them to dress in any shade of blue or purple because purple was my mother-in-law's favourite colour. Like a fawn or a cream, sort of a navy would be fine, a black would be fine. So we all did coordinate our clothes so that I could use these papers to scrap these photos. So it was all quite planned, because when I saw these papers I just felt that they were perfect for a special celebration, such as a special birthday or an anniversary. They are also would be beautiful as a wedding, to scrap wedding photos. But they're very soft and natural colours with just a hint of blue. So I'm just going to pop this page here on the inside of the album. So this will cover up the inside perfectly and we won't see any of the material. I'm just creasing the edge here because this paper will need to fold over this little bump in the binder. So I'm just sort of helping the paper, showing it where to fold with my bone tool so that it's getting the idea of where it needs to fold and crease. I'm sort of training it to match the binder. You do need to sort of help the paper fold where you want it to fold, otherwise it will sort of buckle where you don't want it to. The next step is to cut a piece of the paper the same at 12 by 9.5 inches. This is the piece for the spine board. We're going to score at 1.5 inches, 1 3/4, 2 inches, 2.5 inches, 3 inches, 3.5 inches, 4 inches, 4.5, 5, 5.5, 6, 6.5, 7, 7.5, 7 3/4, 8 inches, and 9.5 inches. We need to fold this now. We are going to create mountains. You will have a mountain and a valley. Each mountain will be what we glue our pages onto. So you're going to have 4 mountains for our pages because we'll have eight pages in this album. We're also going to have a little section just to get us over that little bump in the binder. So we have our tiny little bump, we have our 4 mountains, and then we have another tiny little bump. We're just going to trim that little bit off there. We don't actually need that bit, that's an extra bit. We're now going to glue those mountains together. As we glue each of those mountains together, we will create a nice flat back, and this will glue smoothly down into the spine of our album. And on the other side, we have our mountains sitting up nice and straight and tall. That will be perfect for adding our photo pages onto. So now we're going to glue that whole section into the binder. So I'm putting glue on each section. And then I just need to smooth that out and apply some pressure so that the paper is happy inside the album. We're going to leave that to dry for a little bit, and we're going to take our photos. Now, I asked my mother-in-law to choose 30 photos. I think we had 300 something taken, but I wanted her to pick her top 30. I'm going to be using the frames that I've already fussy cut from the number 6 paper in the Precious Moment collection. The photographs that were taken by the photographer had a large background, very large background, and the people were quite small in the photos, as you can see here. This actually worked to my advantage for creating this album. It meant that I could fit a lot of photos on one page, and it also meant that they fitted quite nicely into the frames. So my next job was to find frames that suited each of the photographs. Then I would glue the frames onto the photograph. And then I would cut around the frame. This allowed me to use a lot of photographs on each page of the album. I also used the Mintay frame book because some photos were just a little bit too big to fit into the frames from the number 6 paper, and I didn't want to squish them all into tiny frames if it didn't suit. So for the bigger photographs, I used larger frames from the Mintay frame book. I fussy cut the frames in advance so that I could easily use them without having to cut. Once I had all of my photos ready, I placed my 8 layouts onto a bed, and I sorted the photos into which layout they would go on. So you can see from this picture that each layout had roughly 3 to 4 photographs on it. And I had to do this on a large space. I couldn't do this at my table because my table doesn't fit that many scrapbooking papers laid out. So I had to move it all to the spare bedroom where I could lay out all of my pages. So there was 8 pages plus there was the beginning of the front and the back of the front cover. So there's actually 10 layouts altogether. So there was 10 pages laid out on the bed, and then I could spread those photographs between those 10 layouts. I added recycled cardboard to the back of every photograph so that each photo was ready to be glued onto the layout. I now had every page planned for the album, and so now it was just a matter of taking each page one at a time and constructing the layout. This was the first page that I created. I actually had to reduce my pages down a tiny bit to fit perfectly into the binder. For each page, I took off 1/2 inch on each side of the layout. I had already planned the position of my photos for each layout. I've also fussy cut lots and lots of elements from the Mintay Precious Moment collection so that I would have some elements that I could use to decorate my layouts. For this layout, I was creating a cluster of embellishments underneath the oval framed photograph, and then I had the two wooden frames on a diagonal. I used some cheesecloth underneath those fussy cut floral clusters. And then I glued that oval frame on top. I added some beautiful lace to go along the bottom of the top photo and along the top of the bottom photo. I added a sticker sentiment from the Mintay Precious Moment cardboard sticker sheet. Then I embellished with some flat back pearls. And then I added some extra lace underneath the paper layers. Moving on to the second layout now. This was a 3 photograph layout going in a diagonal line. I trimmed 1/2 inch off either side of the paper that I chose to use. I played around with the photos for this one, and I actually switched out one of the photos and changed it. So I ended up using 3 photos that were different in size. I looked for fussy cut elements that I could layer underneath my photographs. I glued down the larger photographs first. Then I found some cheesecloth and some white crinkled ribbon. Then I began to glue down some fussy cut elements and the cheesecloth underneath my middle photograph. Just positioned those where they looked best, just poking out from the layers of the photograph. Moving on now to the third layout. This layout had 5 photos on it, which was a lot of photos. But because the photos are so small, it was quite easy to fit that many onto a page. I had already decided on the layout of the photographs, so all I needed to choose was the fussy cutting images that I was going to use in order to decorate. I glued the photographs down first, and then I glued down my fussy cut floral clusters onto the tops of the photos. I included a sentiment from the cardboard sticker sheet with some cheesecloth. I added in some lace for extra embellishment. Moving on to our next layout now. This layout was again 3 photographs. I already knew the position that I wanted the photographs to be in, and I trimmed down my paper, so I just glued my photographs straight onto the paper. This album actually was quite simple to put together. The focus is on the photographs with embellishment to enhance the page, but there's not a lot of embellishment in each of these layouts. It's just subtle embellishments. I'm just adding in some floral clusters underneath the top photograph and some lace for extra decoration. Once I was happy with all of the extra layers of lace and papers, I glued that top photograph down, and then I also found a cardboard sticker sheet sentiment that I can add to this layout. And I found a crinkled ribbon bow that I also added. There's my sentiment, and the layout is complete. Moving on to the next layout now. This has got 4 photographs in it. It starts with this beautiful page that I love, this paper. It's a big embroidery hoop. It sort of reminds me of a dream catcher. So I use this page a lot in this album. I think I used this 4 times because it was one of my favorite pages. These are the photos that I'd chosen for this page. I went about making a big cluster of embellishments in the middle of the 4 photographs. And these, the images and from the Precious Moment collection are just perfect for creating beautiful shabby chic floral clusters. It's beautiful flowers and elements that you can put in together. Really enjoyed creating these layouts. They came together very easily. Moving on to the next layout now. This one consisted of 3 photos, 2 in the oval shaped frame and 1 in the silver rectangular frame. Again, I just began by trimming off the barcode strip and trimming 1/2 inch off each side of the paper. Once my photos were in position, I went about adding in my fussy cut layers and some lace underneath the photographs. And just repeated this process for every layout in this album so that everything looked the same across the whole album. Cheesecloth added in for just a bit of extra different texture. Let's glue that all down now. Glue in all the different layers. And just working my way around the photo, going down this side of the photo. And moving on now to the next layout. Again, this was another one of the embroidery hoops, but this time I cut it out because it's going to be on the inside of, I think this is the back cover. And so I've already got paper in the album for that. So I fussy cut out the whole embroidery hoop so that I will still see the background of the paper that I've already chosen. Just following the same principle of lace and floral clusters popping out from below the photographs. And one on the top there. I love the white crinkle bows. They look so pretty, gives it that shabby chic vintage feel. Adding on one of the little lanterns. The lanterns are really cute in this collection. Some pearls. Gluing on the bow there. Moving on to the next layout now, another one of those embroidery hoops. Got two photos this time. I actually used the swing in this one, which is one of the beautiful elements from the fussy cutting sheet. So I popped that swing in there. This page was a picture of all the grandchildren. Just adding in all the floral clusters and the lace and the cheesecloth. Putting on a sentiment, a bit of cheesecloth to soften it, some pearls. This is another one of the ones that have been cut out, so it's going to be going on the back or the front cover. I think this one's the front cover. Alright, so we're back to the album now. I'm just going to be gluing down those little flaps that I didn't glue down before, and I'm going to add some lace to hide the join in the papers. Just making sure that's nice and straight. There's some more lace to hide that join. And these embroidery hoops that I had already fussy cut, I'm actually going to use them on the inside. I'm going to add some ribbon. I forgot to add the ribbon before, so I'm just going to add it underneath this embroidery hoop. I'm just taping that in to make sure that it's really secure and it's not going to come out. So I've glued it and taped it in. Just going to glue that straight onto the page. Adding the tape in on the ribbon in onto the other side. So I'm actually using two ribbon, one the crinkly white ribbon and one a strip of torn silk material. There's the other fussy cut embroidery hoop, so I can glue that straight onto that page now. And so that is the inside layers of the album complete, and now it's time to glue on the pages. This takes a little bit of patience because you have to wait patiently while the glue dries, which can be challenging, because if you move it too quickly you won't get a nice strong finish. And we're just going to glue another page onto the back. Just have to make sure that you're lining up your pages so that they're, completely in alignment, especially over the corners. putting in the next page now, putting glue on the little mountain that we created. So you can see that the mountains are going to go in between the two pages and you don't see them at all. More glue. Obviously you want to have made your decisions about what order you would like your pages to go in, because once you've glued those pages into the album you can't change that order. To the next page, now just being patient while the glue sets. Next page in. Nearly finished now. The front cover, I chose this windmill photograph and the sentiment from this cardboard sticker sheet that says "Our Memories." Underneath the brown wooden frame, I added floral clusters. This was an easy way to soften the photograph. I cut all of these from one of the 12 by 12 sheets prior to making the album so that I had everything there ready to go. Just measuring to make sure that that photo is in the center of the front cover. Let's take a look at the album now so you can see what it really does look like inside. It's the inside front cover and the first page. It's the next two pages. And the next two pages. The next two pages. And then the last page and the inside of the back cover. I was really happy with how this album turned out. It was really fun to create. The papers are amazing. You can see how the material gets a little bit wrinkled when you open it, which is why I want to swap to using the spray adhesive for my next album that I make from scratch. And then I can tie that up there with the bow. And that is my completed album. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'd love to see your take on an album with the Precious Moment collection or one of the other Mintay collections. Please let me know in the comment section below whether you like this tutorial. I would love it if you could subscribe to my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching and have a lovely crafty day.